ahead and jump in. I'm talking about customer roundtables today, and basically this is a way that I'm encouraging companies to start your community efforts for your customers without all of the overwhelm, all of the spending money on a strategy and research and all of those things, all of the all of that time that, I think the average that I talk to a company is they'll research it for up to a year before they actually decide how to provide a community and, decide on what platform and everything to use. And, between your salary and everyone involved and everything, it costs hundreds of thousands. And as a community person who's been doing community in the B2B SaaS space for several years, I don't think it's all absolutely necessary. I think there's an easier way to get started, and that is customer roundtables. I'll be editing this as I'm talking to you as well as I think of more to add, because I thought I'd have a few days this week to work on it, but I've had about 35 minutes. But basically, this is a great way to bring your customers together and start to show them that you're interested in giving them a space to connect. And there's so many great reasons that this works. One, you give them a very specific topic. You can invite any of the customers that you want to invite in just a small cohort or a bigger group of them. So you can say, I'm going to invite 50 people to see how many will sign up for this. And you can expand that if you want to. You can get this on your schedule usually within 3 to 4 weeks, and then start promoting it. So it's very quick to get it started. There's not a ton of preparation. You can make it more prep work as you move along, as you start to do more of these. But in the beginning, you can just say, I'm going to test this out. In a recent call I had with someone in customer marketing, I think it was in my cohort course, they were like, I don't know how to get my teams internally on board with me spending an hour doing this call and even a little bit of prep. And I said, well, you can align it with whatever your goals are. So their goals were finding more customer stories. I was like, if you figure out the types of customers that you want to invite that are the type of customers that you need for stories, and you invite enough of them, you're going to get them on a call and be able to start engaging with them quickly. And once you have customers engaged, like if you've seen any kind of community forum for a software company, you're going to notice that stories start to leak out really quickly. And so you can always follow up with those. So I told her, instead of focusing it on, I just want to give the customers a space to connect, focus it on, I want to try to do this because I've heard of other companies doing this to get more customer stories, more customer advocates, more customer references. Because once you're in these calls, you're going to identify your customers quickly and be able to see who wants to talk, who wants to comment, who wants to respond to questions, what their expertise is, what they like to talk about, and what type of advocate they are. I didn't include on this list yet, but it helps me kind of think about these customers in the 4 types of advocates that Laura Ramos talks about from Forrester. The validator, somebody that does reviews, likes to share like things that have worked, and they want to just make sure that other people don't make mistakes. There's the educator that just wants to, and this is very similar to a validator, but an educator they tend to want to teach all of the great things that they've learned. They want to share what they've failed at and all of those things. And then the status seekers, and those are the people that want to take any opportunity with your company to grow in their career, to get more opportunities and things like that. I just want to make sure you can add in chat and interrupt me if you have questions, by the way. And then the collaborators, and those are your higher level, senior and leadership people. But in the call itself, you're going to start to see all of these things pop out. It's kind of like getting a lot of customer data at once. And if you have been doing customer marketing for a while, you know that customer data is very helpful. And if you have thousands of customers, you know that just because one customer gets on and says something, it's likely that that same story or that same use case or another customer is very similar to them. So it's showing you a bit about trends in your customers as well. I'll stop there for a moment in case anybody wants to interject any thoughts or questions, because I've talked really fast.
And the other thing I've done with customer roundtables is try to use it as an opportunity to help our account teams address customer questions, like often about bigger, more industry-wide topics. So, hey, we're seeing, if all of a sudden I see a couple of account managers saying, I got a question about like how people are responding to XYZ or wondering about this. So, for example, we work with websites, and so there was a big algorithm update in the spring, and all of a sudden I heard a couple of RMs being like, hey, my customer is asking if other people are seeing their traffic change or asking about this. And so we were able to throw together a roundtable, and I think it was a good opportunity for us to be supportive of our customers, and we ended up getting a ton of great content out of it, turn it into a blog post. So it was a really good way for us to help gather our own information about what people were seeing and experiencing in a way that also felt really helpful to customers.
Yeah, absolutely. You think about your goals going into, okay, I'm going to meet with some customers here. I can look for customer stories. I can ask for some feedback, and it it really does, it will align however you'd like it to. Thank you, Lauren, for sharing that. Anyone else?
Yeah. Mary, what happens when you pull together a customer forum, customer conversation, and then maybe you have two people show up? Do you just build from there? How do you handle that?
So, yes, I will build from there. But what I like to do is, in preparing for this type of call, like I want to come up with a topic that's interesting to a lot of customers, and I want to make sure I've got a decent number of RSVPs. So if I can get
Okay.
them to RSVP, say 50 people beforehand, I'm pretty much guaranteed that I'll get maybe 5 to 30 of them show up. It depends. But even if it is just two people that show up, ask them, what brought you to the call today? What would you like to discuss about this topic? And I like to prepare by having a few kind of topic sentence or questions to get started with, so that customer or those members can actually latch onto something and get into the conversation.
Okay.
Maura, is it Maura?
Oh,
Yes.
oh, this is
Okay.
Jean.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Maura posted in chat. We had one roundtable where one customer showed up. I had one or two CSMs on the call, and it turned out to be a great opportunity for them to get the one-on-one support questions answered. And yeah, she says this has always been her fear.
It's
Yeah,
always a fear of mine. Every single time I'm like, what if nobody comes? And usually they do, but this time we just had one and it turned out okay. So even if one person shows up, it turns out okay.
Okay.
yeah.
Thanks.
And so one thing I want to talk about is that an engagement, once people have joined the call, getting them to participate. So, like I said, if you come in and you have a couple of talk points, or another person in your team or in your company that's going to have some back and forth with you, that's really helpful, especially if you can get a customer that you know is an advocate and you talk to them beforehand and you're like, hey, so and so, thank you so much for being our advocate. As always, you know I love you. Maybe less casual than that, but I'm having this customer call. I thought that it'd be something you'd be interested in, and I could really use the support and getting it jump started with some engagement. Could you join? I found that that can be helpful when I am nervous or I don't feel like I have a great connection with the customers already to be able to pull out some of that content once we get on the call. Yes, this could be marked as customers with customers as education, Sheila. Um, yeah,
Yeah, because we used to do, like these labs. And so we'd invite one of our customers, that was more of the teacher and who was very technology savvy and having a lot of success and do like a lab. And so we'd invite other customers. Um, and it was casual and they could ask questions and certainly the one customer would present and certainly CSMs and those kinds of folks would be involved, but I don't know that I've ever brought the customers just together to kind of pick a topic once they're there. I would think that that might be hard to get them actually there if they don't
yeah,
know really what's in it for them. And I guess maybe help me out a little bit because
yeah.
um
I usually have a topic in mind, something that is popular in the space, or like I had somebody in my cohort course earlier this year that a big thing was coming out about how you send emails in your domain and all of that, and that's how they started their roundtables, was hosting a roundtable to bring together their email users that would be affected by this, and just having kind of those broader topics gives some people something to look forward to. Because one of the things that I found for this that can be even more effective than just a forum community is that a lot of times with forum communities, people don't know what the value is. They have maybe come into the community and they've looked around and they see, oh, there's good stuff here, but they don't always know that it's going to be great stuff. So then they kind of drop off and don't come back as much because they're like, I know there's value, I just don't have time to really dig and look for it. But if you have a specific topic in mind that is broad enough to have discussions about, um, then you can get them to come in and they know, or at least have a higher expectation that there's going to definitely be value they'll walk away with.
yeah, that's good. And I would imagine if you could, if the customer knows that like maybe their CSM is going to be there or someone from product. I mean, I always feel like they always want access to those folks. And so maybe that helps with the draw.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. Like, you know your company, your customers, your space better than anyone else. So none of this is like really hard rules you need to follow. The basis at it of it all is bringing your customers together, at least having a few of them that will hopefully connect with each other and share, and even be open to connection beyond that call, maybe on LinkedIn or something like that, and making sure that it aligns with enough values or enough goals internally that other teams that, like your email marketing team or whoever, is on board enough to give the effort that they need to give. So you know that more than anyone, what your customers are likely to show up for, what they will talk about. If you have a lot of developer customers, then you want to probably start with a topic where they feel really good about educating each other, because they like to build on their ego a little bit. Not that we all don't, but just
Yeah,
you know your people best.
sure.
So once you're on the call, I like to start out with a couple of topics. If I can't get anybody to respond, I will call out a name or two. Um, like I said, a lot of times it's good to know at least one person on the call, to be able to start pulling them out and getting them to engage. If you can, a couple more, you'll learn over time. But generally, if there's only 2 or 3 people on a call, like Maura said, they're going to participate more because nobody else is there. They can't pass the bill to somebody else. Um, and I love those calls when it is just one person that shows up, or, Haley and I had gotten on a call to have with somebody else and they weren't able to make it, and it ended up just being us. And I'm so glad we had the call. I'm like, this was absolutely fantastic. And you learn so much about those customers, about the perspectives that they have. And it's kind of like a customer interview moment without a lot of that pressure or that burden, on the customer or yourself. And so that's always something to keep in mind. Just find a way to make it successful if only 1 or 2 people show up. What I like to do now, once I've gotten engagement, I've gotten people to participate on the call, is after the call. That's where I'm going to do more work. And that's where, um, I think more of the value is now that all these people have shown up and all these people have shared a little bit, I can start to think about what was their expertise, who would be a good advocate for the types of opportunities that I have right now, and then reaching out to them. So I'll make a list of the people that chat, a list of the people that actually asked questions or, answered questions, and then reach out to them and say, hey, I'd love to hear more about your experience with our company or our software or in this topic. And once you're on those calls, I found that it's very easy to say, thank you for sharing this with me and the other customers that were on the call. Would you want to share it with more customers? Or would you want to share it with more people? And that's where you can step it up to become a blog post or a webinar or a lunch and learn or a lab, like you were talking about, Sheila, or even a case study at some point. So I really like that, but I also like to go through and kind of tag parts of the call in whatever software I'm using to record it. So that might be, I use grain.com a lot, but I've also used other software where I can have AI run through it a little bit and, just summarize some of the things that were learned so that I can turn that into a newsletter for other customers to be able to either hear from other customers, because that's what they're really wanting to do. They're joining these calls to see what other customers have to say and have to share. And that's where I tend to like talk to people about the scalability of this. But I'll get there in a second. So, after it's done, making your list a little summary. I was on a call the other day where somebody was talking about after a call, they'll just kind of turn it into a really short blog post to share with customers. And when you're able to tag another customer into something and say, this customer said this is the success that they're talking about or they're using or they've, been able to achieve, it's so different than your own SMEs, your own customer success people saying the same thing. So this is just one of those areas where I think customer education is just really huge. Um, and go ahead, if you have any questions, go ahead and jump in and we can talk more.
I'm curious if you do breakout rooms ever, or if you think it's better to keep people together, or how you decide.
Yeah, that's a good question. I know in your what was it? Your last call, you talked a little bit about breakout rooms, I feel like, or you
Yeah,
said it, brought
it
it
was
up
like more of
before.
a formal event, I guess, and a round table. Sometimes I wonder, is it better
Yeah.
to be smaller groups? Is it
I
better
think
to?
it depends on what the purpose of your event is, Lauren. With some of them, if it's truly about getting to know other people, if it's really more like a networking event with a topic, then breakout rooms are a really good way to do it, because but you just have to remember to allot a good portion of time to those space, to giving them an opportunity to talk to each other about whatever it is. 5 minutes is not enough, right?
Yeah.
And you need to give them some real good time to do that. So if you're really talking about a 1 hour call, you really need to focus that the together time as a group is really maybe 20-25 minutes at the very most, so that you can get everybody an opportunity to break into the rooms and then have the conversations, and then bring back everyone and have a conversation about the conversations, right? So that people can say what they found, useful.
Yeah,
But it's
absolutely.
otherwise it's really challenging to use them, because they can break if you're not careful.
I think some people really like the breakout rooms for those smaller groups to come together. I will go on record to say that I am far too selfish to do it, because I want to hear everything. I want to take everything I can from these, roundtable calls and turn it into as much content, as many proof points or pieces of education as I can. And if I'm not in those breakout rooms, I can't do that. So I want to be a part of as much of it as I can. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't come and say, let's have a networking call for customers and do breakout sessions. I think as long as people know what they're getting into ahead of time, then that's perfectly acceptable, and that could work. And like you found a lot of value in those, and I'm sure a lot of people have. I love having the small conversations that I get to have with people when I do a breakout. But because my goal with these calls is to get as much information and get it out there to other customers that it could be effective for, if I'm missing a lot of the content, it doesn't work well for me. But again, you know your customers and your space better. So if you can figure out how to make that work best for you and your customers, then you don't listen to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're probably right too that some of it is a preference, because I know the last time we did a roundtable, I was intending to do breakout rooms. The conversation really got going with the big group, so I didn't end up splitting it off. I just kind of let it go. And then afterwards, some people were like, wait, we were going to do breakout rooms, and seemed disappointed that we hadn't. And so I'm trying to think about how to accommodate sort of different people wanting different things.
Yeah.
And maybe the answer is you just can't always, but
Yeah, but I think you can start the call with, when we have these calls, and especially if I have somebody new that's going to host one of these calls, I say, we're a very laid back group. We will bring topics to the call that we want to ask questions about. Even if somebody is a host that is sharing something where there's probably going to be interruptions, you don't have to bring certain material. You can just come and talk if you want to. This is a call that's very much going to follow the interests and the direction of the people that are participating. And so that kind of helps give them the responsibility. So if they're like, we're getting close on, like, late on time, and we were going to do breakout sessions, can we do those? You want them to be able to approach you with that. And if you get to the end and you're like, oh, we were going to do breakout sessions. Does anybody still have an interest in doing that? Would you be interested in, doing this next week, and seeing what they want to say? Or really just trying to understand what that they're trying to get out of those breakout sessions, as well, as far as, now that they've heard all these other customers talk, are there certain customers you'd like to connect with that I can make an introduction with? There's so much you can do after the call that is super helpful for those customers. And so now I'll just talk quick about the scalability of this, because that's the biggest question. We have thousands and thousands of customers. How can we possibly scale this? Well, first, when you think about a community with a forum, 90% of those people will not participate in the community. They will join, they might leave a comment at some point, but that's even unlikely. A lot of them are joining to see what other people like them have to say and if they can connect with them. And so when they're given someone specific in the forum that has answered a question that they like, now they know they can reach out to them. So take away 90% of your customers, because even if they join the call, they're not going to say or do much on those calls. They're really just there to learn and connect later with those customers. Now that you have those 10%, and that is just 10% of the call that will actually participate, just like our call, we've got 3 or 4 people. That's probably 25% of people on the call. But because this is a smaller call, that makes sense. Once that call has happened and you have those people participating, you realize, okay, we had 300 people show RSVP for this call, 70 showed up, and 10 of them actually participated. So now you're seeing that for certain topics, if you hold a topic call every quarter, then you're not going to be so overwhelmed. And it is more scalable. Not only that, but the content you get from it is so much more helpful to customers. And so when you start going to your newsletters and saying, we have content from this customer that has been successful this way, we have content from this customer who has used our other tool, it kind of steps up the believability, the trust in your content, because it's not just you shouting the things that you want to shout about your company, it's other customers. And so it does scale well enough. And then you can decide from there, do I want to add more of these events? Do I want to create a Slack group that these people can participate in? And that's where you have more control of this slowly phasing from, we're starting with a customer call that we can share recordings and summaries of, to we have a community for our customers or even the industry.
Quick question for you, Mary. As you're
Sure.
talking about potentially creating content that is then shared, how are you getting approvals for that? Like, how is that working? Where is that in this process? Because I love that idea, but do you create the content and then take it after the fact for an approval, or do those coming to the roundtables understand that what their contributions could be shared within just the customer community or potentially elsewhere? Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so generally if I'm doing this for customer roundtables, I'll say, this is going to be recorded for other customers to access. Anything after that, like it could be shared in the customer newsletters. It's generally customer content for other customers. If I want to take that and turn it into something that's more customer like education, but in the public, then I'm going to ask them, would you want to be an advocate? And that's going to be something that you have to figure out as you're working on this. How do your advocates, how do your customers or the people that participate in these calls, what level of comfort can you offer and what can you share? And then telling them that at the beginning of the call, like, I have intended on recording this. But if there are enough people that are uncomfortable with that, I can remove this, their section from the call. There's a lot of things you can do to play with that as you see more customers. What you want to do as a community manager in this way is really say, this is a laid back call. We want to really engage with you. So if you have any questions or concerns or anything else, please message me, please come to me so that it can be taken care of and there's no issue between us. And I found the more that you put yourself out there to say, hey, give me feedback, the more people see that as an approachable persona where they can come to you and say, I'm really not comfortable with you sharing this part of the recording, or I would prefer if you not use my name. That's probably more likely to happen. And even then, like I use Cast Magic, which is it'll take the content in a call and I can have it summarize what Julie says on the call or what Sheila says on the call, and then remove their name from it and just summarize that great information for my customers. So there's a lot of options once you get on and play with it. And I'd say I've probably done a good 100 of these calls, so I'm very comfortable doing them. But at first, you're going to be learning a lot and trying to follow the direction that those customers want to take. So I try to give anyone that does participate more of my attention in that follow up to see, like, get to know them a little better and build that relationship. Does that help?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I think it depends on who's in that community, and typically, I've had enterprise customers, and so the folks in in the communities have been part there's a lot of approval necessary for sharing names and that kind of thing, and so that's
Mhm.
just kind of where my question comes from. But I like that, and it looks like Jean is asking what tool is it that you were using that summarizes. Could you
Yeah,
put that in the
That's
chat?
magic. Yeah.
yeah, it's called Cast Magic, but if you go to any of the like what is it? Like there's an AI for that.com and look for podcast summarization tools or something like that. That's what it is a podcast summarization tool. And there's a lot of these out there. Um, Talking about though, those higher level customers, one, this is a great opportunity to be very specific about the cohort that you're inviting and a great opportunity to make sure that no one is showing up without value that they want to see from talking to your other customers. So if it is the C-suite, it's going to have to be a bit more curated, and you're probably going to want to talk to your customer success or your AE teams to see what is going to be important to them, what they want in these calls, who they want to connect with, because Sienna Abdalian did a call with us last year in February and talked about how they were having higher leadership teams come together. And it wasn't just CEOs, it wasn't just CMOs, it wasn't just CTOs, it was them and then people in the next level down in the company from other companies. And the value was they got to ask questions that they didn't feel comfortable asking their own employees. They got to get perspectives that maybe their employees weren't up on those trends or something like that. But this is a great opportunity to one, learn a lot, even if you don't record it or you don't record it for anyone else to ever listen to again, you can still take notes and learn a lot. You can still say, in most cases, a Fortune 500 CEO was on one of our calls and talked about XYZ, or someone in the C suite of one of our accounts talked about and shared their success in XYZ. When it comes to our customers, sure, they like to see what other customers have to say and who that customer is and where they can find them on LinkedIn and all of those things. But it's still better to have an anonymous customer share something, trusting you that it actually came from a customer, than for it to come from just directly from your company, because it adds another layer of expertise that, sure, your company knows a lot of great information, but they've been force fed it a lot. No offense to anyone, but just in B2B SaaS, we have. And they want to know what somebody else who is doing a very similar job or is doing the job that they want to do someday is doing and what they have to say about success. And behind the scenes, if someone says, "Hey, I was really interested in what this person said, would you be able to connect me?" You can always reach out to that customer and ask, if they'd be interested in talking to this other customer. So there's a lot of ways to play with that and make sure you can share some of that expertise and really get it out there to your customers and education and all of that without upsetting anyone. Okay, so this list here is just kind of the steps that I take and, prepare by choosing the right cohort of customers, especially when it's your first time doing it, and try to identify customers that you hope will contribute on the call, whether or not you reach out to them and say, I'm doing this call. I really hope that you can talk about XYZ, or would you mind, helping me by answering a question on the call if I get into a spot where I'm stuck, like showing any vulnerability again increases trust. So saying I need someone like you to help me, it's not a bad thing. Choosing a good topic, you can ask all of your people internally. You can go to your company social media accounts and look and see what's a good topic. Having that engagement and thinking through how you're going to get people to contribute on these calls. One of the things I have done is posting and saying, does anybody want to share their LinkedIn URL? And then in the follow-up email, being able to share that with other customers so they can reach out and just get to know each other a little bit more. Then the post roundtable steps. I think the biggest, most helpful things for me when I first started this was saying, hey, I'd love to hear more about your experience, and documenting that. Like, so I know that they're an expertise in this topic. They tend to sound like they're an educator and they want to help and give back in our space. These are the topics that you ask them on the call, are there topics that you'd like to share with other customers? Because now you know who to go to when those topics come up. And I always keep that in my little spreadsheet CRM or whatever tool I'm using so that I can do that. And then asking further in that call, if you have a one-on-one follow-up call with them, would you like to share this with more customers or with our entire ecosystem, or publicly? Can we turn this into a story? And moving from there, the company value, I probably should have put that up higher because that's something you're going to want to consider when you're asking your marketing team or your boss or supervisor if you can do this. Try to make it align with any of the initiatives that you already have. And then the high level customers, just keeping in mind how you can curate that to make sure that they get a lot of value from these calls. Okay, well, that's all I have. So, what else are we all thinking about today?
Everyone should be aware that over the weekends, Mary was a guest on Mixology. I'm going to publish the latest Mixology, so you'll need to listen so you can hear Mary talk more about all of the things she just talked about here.
Mary talking more. That's what you all want for the weekend.
Awesome.
Thank you, Christine. It was a fun call.
We could
And
talk
I,
further.
oops, I was just going to say just really quickly, I do like the idea of, offering, or kind of suggesting that maybe individuals or customers would like to share their, LinkedIn URLs. I just think that that's really interesting. And if that gets known, that's a great connector kind of thing. I love that. If that becomes something that the customer base is aware of, then driving more interest in coming, because you do actually, I mean, that's great value to actually end up with the ability to connect then, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I've been saying, it's what's important to the people in your space. That it could be that they're on a Discord that they all like being a part of. Just because you're building community in a different way through these calls doesn't mean you can't, one, participate in those other communities or leverage those communities for what you're doing as well. So if they're there and you know that a lot of them are there, then you can tell them to connect there as well. Okay. Does anyone have any other thoughts or questions they want to talk about?
I have a question for you on this one, Mary. If
Sure.
we go with the concept of we pick a subject and 8 people show up, or 18 people, or whatever, pick a number, they actually show up. Uh, one of the things that I found challenging is creating like communication forum cohorts of the people that were at the session so that they can continue the conversation after.
Okay.
Just from is number one, sometimes they say they really want that, but then the engagement with that, unless we put as much effort into it as we do the other forums, it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah. It almost never does. So you can force it and really try to push people. And what you're going to find is that you have to be on them very often. You have to say, hey, Sheila, in the call, you talked about XYZ. April just responded to that. Here's a link so you can go, see what she had to say. And then Sheila responds, and you go to April and you say, oh, April, Sheila just responded, because they're going to get those automated notifications, but after a while you start to ignore those, right? So it gets less exciting and it becomes a lot of work for you. What you can do instead, and still isn't at the same level, is offer to host a call just for them again, based on a time that they say it'll work. A lot of people get a lot of excitement in these calls where they're connecting for the first time. And then when it comes to those forums, that almost never goes well. When it comes to a follow-up call, it usually, I'd say at the most, you're going to get about 2/3 that'll show up, less if it's higher level leadership. But encouraging them to connect on LinkedIn, reach out about certain things that they talked about on the call. So say you're on the call and, Sheila today asked, could this be part of like customer education or talking about customer education? After the call or during the call, I can say, Sheila, Christine talks a lot about customer education. This might be a good time for you to reach out to her and talk about customer education. Without those like very specific reasons to talk to each other again, it's hard to make them connect, and fewer people will show up because that excitement dies after a little bit. So what I found is building a small group of people, maybe up to like 20, that you can create those calls for regularly so that more of them will show up. But it does take a good deal of curation. The other option is to put someone in charge in that group and say, this is your little community of our customers and you can connect with them and reach out to them. But honestly, I have not found that it's super helpful to have those follow-up forums. If and when they work, it's great. I don't see them work a lot.
I haven't either, and I just wanted to see if that was just me.
No, it is not. It's something about the psychology and like walking away, and then, over time the excitement is a little bit less as the real world hits back again and you're like, oh, I don't have a lot of time to do this, and all of those things. And psychology is a huge part of any kind of community effort. So it's really, it can be a lot of work and not worth the effort. Now, if you turn those same people in that call and said, for the next 6 months, we're going to have Julie show up once a month and talk about XYZ, and she agrees, and Sheila's going to, and Lauren Stefano, and Haley, and Maura, April. Now I can get them to come back and encourage all the others to show up to each other's calls. But there's a magic of them actually building those relationships and trust and respect and showing up that I can't always make happen for the effort, like, and make it enough valuable enough for me for the effort that's involved. Like, as a business person, doesn't make sense for me to build these relationships between them and get them to keep coming back unless if I'm not getting something from it, like monetarily for my company, which sounds awful. I realize that. Um, but it's something you have to keep in mind if you're trying to do that at the same time. Did I just ramble way too much for everyone? Sorry.
No, that was fine.
As you're laughing at me because you're like, yeah,
No,
she's
I'm laughing at what you said at the end, not at any of the content before that.
yeah.
Because
Sorry.
you could talk for 2.5 hours and I would still get more out of it than not.
This is great information, Mary.
Oh, good. I'm glad because sometimes I have no idea if people really like think what I'm saying is helpful. I got on the expansion call earlier today and I feel bad for everyone who missed it. It was Sheethel Shaw, Erwin Hipsman, and Ashley Ward, who were like really great at their jobs. And we had a call, and towards the end, we were talking about community and calls like this. And Ashley was like, "You've inspired me to try this. Like, this is a great idea." And I was so excited to be able to give her some value because I've gotten so much value from things she said over the years. And, the same for some of the people in this call. I love to hear everyone's experience and expertise. It really helps add to what I'm learning and how I'm able to continue helping the community grow. Yes, it was recorded, Haley, and I talked about you because our call from the other day was so good. It was such a great call, and you made me feel so good about building the community. So thank you. So everyone, go ahead.
No, I just said thank you. I'm glad I'm off camera because you have me blushing over here.
So, one, I'm going to try to start offering this as a service. So if you know anybody that would be interested, or more importantly, I'm awful at pitching and really showing the value of what I'm trying to sell. So if you say, Mary, selling customer service or customer roundtable facilitation is it's useless to me. It doesn't do any good. But if you call it this instead, now it adds the value and I understand it better. That would be hugely helpful. And let's see. So we had an expansion call today. That went great. I soft launched that User Evidence is our first new sponsor. We also have Champion coming back and lots of excitement there. I will be having a tech portal on the website opening the second week of September, where you'll be able to go and learn about the different softwares in our space and how I pick everything apart and the new spreadsheet I have for looking at the different softwares in our space. And next week, Tiffany Nigon is going to join us to talk about creative ways to partner with, reward, and just work with your advocates. So lots going on. And this weekend, Christine's got a new episode of Mixology coming out. So great stuff
We're going to
everywhere.
talk next week. We're talking AI, and Lauren Turner is going to come in, and we're going to talk about designing good prompts.
Oh, great. Yes, that too. Sounds good. And yeah, I'm sure there's more that I'm missing because we're really trying to just amp things up with the community. But if you have any ideas or suggestions for the community, please let me know what you're thinking because that magic is something I could use to help build our community to be even more effective. And today's recording will be on YouTube soon. The expansion recording will be on YouTube, and the call from Emily Amos from the other day about finding participants for your case studies is already on YouTube. So thank you all for coming and listening to me talk for a long time. I appreciate it so much, and I hope you all have a great weekend.
You too.
guys.
Awesome work.
You.
Okay, bye.
Bye.